Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Roundup. Today, I'm very excited. We're going to be having Brad from Copper Creek Cuts coming on the show. But a big thank you to everyone that has come on live. And if you're watching this in the future, get ready for some knowledge bombs, oddly satisfying knowledge bombs that we're dropping here today. And so please welcome from the king of oddly satisfying HQ, Mr. Brad Baer. Thanks for coming on, Brad. I appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Mike. Thank you so much. It's always fun when I can get on with you. I think we've done this once before, and it was fun then, too.
I was so disappointed. Today, you made a YouTube poll, and you asked what people wanted more from you, and only 3% of people said business advice. I literally went into a different YouTube account just to be able to poll twice on the poll and say, no. So,
yeah, business is not popular. It's a subset of a subset of a subset of a subset of a subset who actually care about that. So.
Yeah, well, I know. Well, I guess I'm a subset of a subset of a subset. I need to make a new shirt. I'm a subset of a subset. I enjoy mowing and business. Oh man, cool. Well, thanks for coming on. I think for most people who have watched, they have seen plenty of your videos in terms of mowing grass and doing pressure washing and tons of videos that are oddly satisfying. Today, I want to talk a little bit more from a business angle, as well as your advice for someone getting started. And obviously, we've talked before kind of your unique angle in terms of having the YouTube side and being more of a media company, really, than anything. But I wanted to talk today, how did you get started with mowing and the lawn care and actual Copper Creek Cuts? Where the logos, like, how did you get started with Copper Creek Cuts?
Sure. So the quick background story on me is I started working for Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Florida, an insurance company, in 2004 when I was a junior in high school through a program we had on at our high school. I stayed on with them through graduating all the way up until 2015. And at that point, my wife and I just had our second kid, and she's got a master's. And at that point, I didn't have any kind of degree. So we looked at her earning potential versus mine, and she could make more than I could. And so I said, well, if you don't mind being the breadwinner, I don't mind being stay-at-home mom. So I did that from 2015 till 2017. And then at that point, she was working from home a few days. I think my mom and dad were helping out a day or two. And, our son, who was the newest, wasn't a little baby anymore. So you didn't have to be right there all the time. So I was like, man, I kind of miss working and contributing to the household. So what can I do? Well, I'm still mainly a stay-at-home dad, so I can't really work for anybody, right? Because the schedule just doesn't work. So lawn care is one of those things where, as long as you get it pretty much done on the day that they're expecting, that's really as strict as you have to be. So lawn care is a perfect job that you can do on your own. You can be your own boss. You can set your own schedule. So that's kind of how I got into it. As far as like the nitty gritty of the business, I registered as a sole proprietorship. That was January 2017. So I think in Florida that costs like $20, and it's good for 5 years. You sign up a fictitious name. So technically, my business is Bradley Baer, DBA, doing business as Copper Creek Cuts. Now, the good thing about that is it's very simple. I don't have to keep my business finances and my personal finances separate. I've got a business account and a business credit card, but like one thing is my personal Amazon account gets 5% off of stuff. So I'll order office supplies from there, where if I was an LLC or a corporation or whatever the other options are, that'd be a big no-no. And then there's also no annual filing. The downside is if like I decide to drink a beer at lunch and kill somebody, they can come after my house, my retirement accounts, because everything, I am the business. So that's the legal side of it. That was all January. I got insurance that same month. What else did I do? The logo, I don't think the logo was until either 2018, maybe like a year into it. So at first it was just a little stylized Copper Creek Cuts. It was like a cursive font that I thought looked fancy, and it kind of matched the, like when you drive into a neighborhood and it's kind of a fancy looking sign, the font matched, which was really stupid. You couldn't even hardly read it. So anyways, I went on Fiverr, and for $100, I think, there was a guy who did this logo. He did the little mascot on the mower. He made business cards. He made letterhead. He made Twitter banners, Facebook banners. He did like all this stuff. He was based out of Sri Lanka, or she. I don't even know if it was a he or she, but it was amazing. He did really good work. So, anyways, that's kind of the real quick of the whole business and everything.
And then at the time, were you using that Colorado that you now recently split with, or what did you start with?
So what I started with was our 2015 Dodge Grand Caravan, which we bought in expectation of my son, because then there was going to be 4 of us, and I lived across the street from my mom and dad. So if we ever want to go anywhere all together. So it was a 2015 Dodge Grand Caravan with a V6, so it can tow up to 3,500 pounds. I went and got a Harbor Freight trailer for, what do they sell those for? Like $200 or $300, one of the 4x8s. And I spent like $600 putting wood fence picket sidings all on it, making it look real nice, stained it and everything. And it was so sketchy because those Harbor Freight trailers, they don't have a ramp. So I got some some ATV ramps, and I would drive my zero turn up and down those, those little ATV ramps. It was really sketchy. So I used that until I think I upgraded the trailer to a 5x10 enclosed. And then in the fall of 2017, 18 is when I got that Colorado. But yeah, before that, I was just rocking the family minivan.
And at the beginning, it was more of a part-time thing. Did you do any advertising? Like, what did you do to get the first 5-10 customers at the very beginning?
So it was mainly because I was online. So I live in a pretty rural area, and there are about 36 different guys or firefighters or police officers who cut grass, or real businesses that do, but not many of them have a good online presence. And so what would happen is, as people would start looking for new guys, their guy would quit, or they want something new, or they just move in, they would just type into Google. And because I did the free Facebook, I did the Google My Business for free. I had a free Wix site. I still have a free one. So it's like, it's not coppercreekcuts.com. It's coppercreekcuts.wix, some really stupid long. So I just tell people, just Google me. But really, that's the main way that I got started, was just by being online, and people would find me that way.
Did you create that Wix site yourself then to get started?
I did. It did not look very good. I went back and redid it, so I think it looks a little bit more modern now. But just so I could have something where, when people would search for it, it gave some kind of a website, that deal.
And when did you realize that this was kind of become like, you would actually make a little bit of money, that you were going to make a real business? Was it like, I'm going to get the logo, start the business, go get my equipment, and then go look for some customers? Or did you already have some customers before you went out and invested in those things?
No. So part of the reason that I did it this way is because for 11 years I worked for Florida Blue. And so, I was very much into presentation and being professional and crossing all my T's and dotting my I's, because if I misled somebody on an insurance policy, or I said something wrong, I could lose my license, I could go to jail, I could get fined. So starting out, I was very much, I don't care if it takes money, I'm doing everything right. So I'm going to line up the insurance and all the company stuff first, so I can look professional from day one, or as professional as I thought I should be at the time. And then looking back a few months later, I'm like, actually, that logo doesn't look very professional at all. I need to upgrade it. But I still did the best I could. And then as far as the mower, I think I just had some real cheap. It was all new, but it was cheaper, like Poolin Pro string trimmer. It was one of those things that comes apart, so you can just put in an edger attachment. So I started that from the very beginning. So I think for like $100, I got a string trimmer, and then another $50 for the edger attachment. I had a stupid little handheld blower that was battery powered, and I got it on clearance at Walmart. The batteries would only last for 8 minutes on high, so I had to be real careful about where I blew everything off. And then the mower was like the biggest purchase. I had to talk my wife into that one, but it was a 36-inch zero turn. I think it was right over $3,000. And once you do the Sheffield 48 months, 0% interest, it was like $50 or $60 a month. But yeah, I had all that stuff. I got the mower the day after my first mow, which I used my homeowner push mower for, and it was terrible. And I was like, I'm glad I'm getting a new mower tomorrow, because I'm not doing this with push mowing.
So when did it become to the point where it's like, hey, I'm going to actually, make a couple days out of this at least, because I know this is not a full-time business for you starting out. When was it like, okay, I gotta like kind of upgrade the equipment, I've got to go, obviously it was only less than a year before you got another truck, a different trailer. Was it a money thing that you and your wife were like, hey, we got to hit a certain point and then we'll invest a little bit more in the business? Or was it just like a kind of an organic growth into that stage?
So we were very fortunate in that my wife, she could pay for all the bills, and she had been for, from when I quit in 2015 to when we started doing this in 2017. So basically all the money that I made, I dumped right back into the business. I want to say the first year I made something like $10,000, and most of that was mowing, because the YouTube didn't really take off until September. And I don't think I started getting paid until like October. So I only made a couple $100 on YouTube that year. But all that money went back into the business, whether it was that mower or like a new blower here, a new string trimmer here, or new uniforms and equipment. That was another thing I think I did maybe that first year, in addition to the logo, was getting logoed apparel that I could wear, that kind of thing. But yeah, for the first 2 years, I think it all went back into the business. The second year I want to say it was closer to 30,000, and YouTube was a bigger part of that, but it was still mainly mowing. But still, at the end of the year, we didn't make much because I just kept dumping it, and I'd get a new piece of equipment here that made me more efficient. I think that second year, no, the fall of that first year is when I got that stand-on Bobcat mower. So that was another couple thousand. Well, more
I remember watching that video.
You got a good memory. I have a hard time keeping all this stuff straight. But yeah, so it was until like the third or fourth year that we started making money, and we kind of put it in the account. So it was, but yeah, that was mainly because my wife was being able to pay all the bills.
Which is kind of what I want to talk about a little bit too. And I think for a lot of people, whether they're the wife or the husband, or what part of the relationship they are, for someone that's wanting to get started and they're really looking as kind of the funding, is that fact that their spouse or their partner is going to fund the living expenses. What kind of conversation did you have with your wife? And obviously, to her credit, she let you do this. But what was a healthy conversation that you all had that you think could protect someone else from down the road? They're being like, hey, I'm making all the money, you're not doing it, the business isn't making any money, like it was $10,000, like that's nothing, kind of thing. Like what kind of conversation did you have with her?
So, and to her credit, part of her reluctance at first was because before, like six months to a year before this, I would come up, we call them 2-week projects, where I would come up with this idea, and I was like, you know what? We don't have a recycling service out here. What if for $10 a month, I offered to pick up people's recyclables? And I would spend 2 weeks researching, what does it cost? How much do bins cost? What would it cost to buy? And I'd dump all this time, and she wouldn't see me because I'd be on a computer. And so, you do that 6 times in a year. And the 7th time I say, I think I'm going to start a mowing business. She's kind of just like, I've heard this before. Right. So her initial reluctance, I think, was completely deserved because of my track record. So what I should have done to begin with was come at her from numbers, because she was a data analyst. So numbers are what would have talked to her. So I just said, I want to start a mowing business, and I'm going to pick up a couple yards, and I think we're going to make good money. And she's like, based off of what? So once I broke it down and said, okay, if I can get just 5 yards a week and each one of those pays 50, I'm going to pay for the mower, I'm going to pay for the gas. After taxes, I'll have about this much left over, and that's just with 5 lawns. If that can, so that was kind of the conversation where she said, okay, I'm all right with, outlaying some funds to do this. But at least if you have a significant other who you want to involve in, for everything. I guess if you're dating, that's a certain level of whether you want to or not. But if you're married, I think you should. But having the numbers beforehand really, really helps. And I mean, that's something I should have done to begin with. I was just kind of like, oh, it's mowing. I know I'll make money, right? But I never sat down and calculated the stuff, even just hypotheticals, until I kind of had to pitch it to her for approval.
Now she's actually full-time working with you on the YouTube side of things. How has that dynamic changed, even with the relationship, for someone that is perhaps their wife or significant other is working in the office, they're out working with the field, with the crew, or on job sites? What sort of boundaries or discussions have you all had prior to even making that step where she was full-time?
So, and at least as far as full time, I wouldn't, because again, I'm still mainly, I'm mowing 3 days a week, maybe at my busiest, and I'm doing some YouTube stuff. But what she does help out with is like all the landscaping, which is few and far between. So she's kind of transitioned now to where she's doing the virtual schooling with the kids during the day, and I'm still home most of the time, so I can help her out with that. But one thing I've noticed about us is that we work very well together. We have ran into couples who, when she says she helps me, she'll go do a landscaping project with me, and, she'll work 6, 8 hours in the sun with me, that kind of thing. The wives either say, "Oh, I could never do that," or "I tried working with my husband before and it wasn't good for us," that kind of thing. So we've been very fortunate that we've never ran into those kind of issues. But what I would say would help that is the times we have had issues is when I'm not patient enough, where like I know what I want done, but I'm not describing it to someone who hasn't done it as much as me. So I can't just say, "Go edge that." I've got to say, so here's the edger. I don't know, when's the last time you used it? Do you remember how everything, so that's an example that we haven't ran into specifically, but it's kind of an example of how I might need to kind of throttle back my expectations and go a little bit slower so I don't frustrate her.
Awesome. And then now this past year, I want to talk about one specific thing in relation to kind of the number side, the business side, something I'm actually experiencing somewhat now, and that is the cost of used vehicles going up so much. Now, in this past year, you went from a Colorado truck to a Silverado, a full-sized vehicle. And when you sold the Colorado, you actually got more money for it than you paid for it brand new a few years before, I believe, or a couple years. Explain that process, and then the decision to go to the larger truck and when that financially made sense for you.
Sure. So this is going to be, I'll get into that. So the first thing is, as far as selling the truck, there's probably more than just one, but there's this company called Carvana, and you may have seen they've got the towers, the car vending machines kind of thing. I don't know if they're great to buy a car from, but they're really good to sell a car to if it is late model and low mileage. So we sold a 2016 Acura ILX. It was after COVID hit and my wife wasn't driving anymore. We had 3 vehicles at that point. So we were like, well, let's just go ahead and get rid of it. Hands down, they gave the best offer, and it was right away. And I thought it was a scam at first because it sounded too good to be true. They're like, "Yeah, we'll come out, we'll pick up your car, we'll cut you a check." Right there. Like, what? No, this doesn't. But it was nice because I didn't have to worry about test drives or dealing with people. That whole thing. And like, well,
that's the headache. I'm telling you, like, all right, now I'm trying to get a new car, and like, I don't even want to do test drives. Like, I just want it. Yeah. Anyways, sorry.
People are no fun. So, anyways, we were like, well, yeah, let's do that. So we knew about Carvana. So when we finally got the new truck and we could sell the old one, they offered. I think it ended up being a couple $100 more than I paid for it. So by the end of everything, because I financed it, so I think I ended up like renting it for $50 a month during the however many months that I had it, because of what they paid. And, I got some money after the loan payoff, that kind of thing. So that was the Colorado. And then at least as far as the Chevy 2500, we got into RV camping when the pandemic hit, and we liked it enough that we said, we think we might be doing this a while. So that little Chevy Colorado I have was only a 4-cylinder and like 2.5 liter or maybe 1.9. It was tiny. 3,500 max was what it could tow. So we got a real tiny camper. If we ever wanted to upgrade, we didn't know what we would want to upgrade to as far as the camper. But when you look at a maxed out 1,500 with the tow packages for like around 35 or 36 grand, I think they were right under 10,000 pounds that it could tow. Or you look at a stock 2,500 that can tow 14,000, and it's about 10 grand more, but it's got a bigger bed. I think it's got like an 8-foot bed, and maybe the 1,500 was a 6 or 7. I can't remember that part, but it seemed to just make sense because we weren't hurting for money and we had enough. Again, my wife was pretty much paying for everything. So for about 2 years, we had the business just banking all of its money. So it was something where we could say, yeah, this is a lot of money, but it'll be good for the business because we'll have more room in the car and we'll be a little bit more productive maybe. And we'll also be able to tow a bigger RV later. So that kind of matched with our personal life. But yeah, that was the story behind it. And I was fortunate enough that whatever I ordered, the specifics that I ordered, GMs didn't say, no, we can't build that. They were able to get it in. So it was a 2 or 3 month process from ordering it and putting a down payment to actually getting it and writing the check for it. But thankfully, we managed to miss the chip shortage and I guess whatever options or accessories we wanted, they had.
The truck's probably gone up $10,000 in value since you bought it.
This is the only time that'll ever happen, right? The only time you buy a truck and a year later it's worth more than what, yeah, crazy.
Oh, man. Over the past, couple years, obviously the YouTube side has really grown for you. And the part I want to kind of focus on, I've really seen as watching your videos throughout those few years, is the adoption of like you just feeling comfortable with you, your personality, your sense of comedic relief, and kind of embracing that. For someone that maybe doesn't do YouTube videos, but kind of either wants to share with other people or just wants to be a better boss and be around other people. What was there any sort of change for you or thing you had to kind of struggle with to adopt that kind of a sense of creative ability? Or was that something that you kind of had to work on and grew into as the YouTube channel grew?
So that's a good question. And I think it's probably, there's a couple of parts. One of it is definitely just the more I got in front of the camera, the more comfortable I felt. And the more I felt like, okay, maybe I can be more like my normal self. That's a little sillier. The other thing is that when I first started out, I had, I started my channel in April of 2017. So I had been mowing for like 3 months, right? So like, what do I know? So when I started the channel, I didn't want to come across as somebody who, this is my opinion, let me tell you what I know, because I don't know anything. So I tried to be very straight-laced and very fact-based in everything I said. So it would be difficult to find fault with it, not because I was giving you my opinion, because here's all the facts. These are what they are. Do with them as you please. And so that kind of presentation led itself to kind of a more straight-laced presentation style that was a little less enthusiastic. Whereas now, 4 or 5 years in, however long I've been doing this, I'll just be like, if you don't read the comments, you're dead to me and you can jump off a cliff for all I care. And I don't mind saying stuff. I don't say that, but you know what I'm saying? I'm a lot more comfortable on camera.
For someone that might have employees, for example, or they're working with their crew and they want to show, they feel like they almost have a facade before their guys of being something that they're not, whether it be they are new and they're kind of putting a face on that they know everything. What would you say to them to kind of get comfort with their own skin and realize that people do want to see the quirky side of you? They do want to see you as a person. They want to see, Brad picking locks at a customer's house. Like where is that line that you would kind of, obviously you don't have a lot of employees, but you've obviously worked in the corporate environment. What have you learned though from sharing, in my opinion, kind of like your tribe or your organization of YouTube, your community? What have you learned that you could potentially help someone in that scenario?
So I think a lot of it comes down to maybe personal security or insecurity, maybe. If you, like, I can understand somebody wanting to put on a face of knowing what's going on, but I think sometimes if somebody's paying attention, they'll probably be able to see through that, either because of what's happening right in front of, like if I acted like I was an expert at installing landscapes or something, if I had a helper who had been doing it for 3 years, he'd probably know, well, that's not the right way to do it. I mean, we could be saving a lot more time this way. So I think if you want to look that way, it's fine, but maybe realizing that it could be a better approach to be more upfront and maybe more collaborative. Like if you think somebody's got a good idea, just say, well, what do you think about, here's what I'm thinking about this. What do you think about that? Does that sound good? And either they're not going to know more than you and say, yeah, I guess that sounds good. And you're like, all right, let's do it. Or they'll say, well, what about blah, blah, blah. And I think if you can do that, that might be for the times you maybe don't know what you're getting into, that could help probably establish a little trust between those people as well. When I was in the corporate world, I was working face-to-face with customers, and the times where I didn't know something, like I don't know why this claim's not processing, I don't know why these benefits are not being covered, here's what I do know, here's where my gap in understanding is, and here's what I'm going to do to find out. They were always a lot more appreciative of that and understanding. And, if I tried to just say, It'll be taken care of in a week. I mean, maybe I was right, but if I didn't know what I was talking about, it could come back to bite me in the end when no, it was a real big issue. So I don't know if I can answer that question perfectly to help out, but that's kind of the best I can come up with.
In terms of the past year or so, obviously being in Florida, a state that's had a lot of boom in the economy, just a lot of people moving into town, all the rest of it. How have you seen that affect you as a smaller operator in terms of number of customers calling, what people are willing to pay, any sort of customer behaviors that have changed just because of the massive influx of demand?
And again, this is going to be on a much smaller scale because I'm just in my little tiny, 2 or 3 mile bubble that I like to travel. So we did get off to a rocky start this year because we had a drought that I think went all the way through May. So, on a good year, we're back to mowing in my geography in March, maybe the end of February if it's real warm and we get some rain. I don't think we started doing stuff until May. So that kind of hurt. But at least in my little county, which I think has just under 30,000 residents, so it's very small. We have had a company called LGI, maybe KB Homes. I don't know. There's some, bigger people who basically they come in, they develop a neighborhood, they smack 150 houses and, they're little tiny cookie cutter things. They're in and out in a year and then they move on and do something else. We have had that company come in and finish 2 developments that had stalled out because of some economic downturn that we had in past years, and then they built a brand new one. And what it looks like is that those people are coming from Jacksonville, which are maybe people who are used to paying a little bit more for lawn care. So especially in this one new neighborhood that I'm really trying to target, I'm having people who they are willing to pay without even batting an eye more than what I've been charging up until this point. And I'm like, well, I think I kind of want to transition more of my yards to these ones and dump some of the other ones that I have.
How has your pricing changed, whether it be because of the new homes or just as the business has grown? I know actively you're not trying to get hundreds of lawns, but like in terms of just a pricing, is there more of a system behind it versus the beginning you're more or less just like $40, like, or whatever it was? How has that changed being a solo operator?
So the way I started out, I started researching December of 2016 before I started in the business in January 2017. And what I found was Lawn Care Millionaire, and that's a YouTube channel, and he's got a lot of good advice. He went through a couple, I think it was like a 3-part thing where he talked about a lot, but one of the bottom lines I remember was if you're not billing at least $40 per man hour, it's very likely you're not making enough to grow and pay taxes and put back into profit and cover your maintenance. And another takeaway was, if you can, $1 a minute is a really good guideline to start. It's a guideline because you can't just say $1 a minute, because if you get more efficient and now a yard only takes you save 10 minutes, are you going to give the customer a 10-minute discount? No. If you're doing a whole yard with a string trimmer, okay, $1 a minute, well, nobody's going to pay you that much, right? So it's a guideline, but that's where I started. And at least for me, I don't know how long a yard's going to take when I start out. Like I know how long it takes me to do my yard, but I'm not really rushing and I'm doing it in flip-flops. And so the other thing that he pointed out that was very important was writing down time. So from the very beginning, this is Yardbook software that I use that routes everything, and you've got a start and a stop time. By doing that from the very beginning, I saw very quickly, well, $30 sounds good, but this yard took me 40 minutes. So that's not hitting that $60 an hour mark. And, if I'm out here beating myself up, $60 an hour, I can hear some people who may not know, I don't want to say know better because that sounds bad, but if they aren't familiar, they're like, well, that's pretty greedy for mowing lawns. But that's just when I'm on $60 an hour. So like if it's a lawn takes 30 minutes, I want at least $30. That doesn't pay for the 30 minutes it takes me to get set up in the morning or break down at night. It doesn't pay for, the 10 minutes travel there and, the getting in and out of the string trimmer, the mower. So there's a lot that goes into it beyond just that little bit of time where I'm getting paid. That unpaid time, you've got to come up with it for somewhere. So it doesn't mean if you look at my whole day, I'm making $60 an hour. Hopefully I am on some of these newer lawns. But so anyways, that's how it started. And the more lawns I did, especially in certain neighborhoods, I'd say, okay, in this neighborhood, the average lawn is taking me about 35 minutes. So let's see if I can start saying $45 for a weekly cut, and maybe let's bump that up 30% for every other week, and let's see what people say. And some would say yes, and I'd say, oh, okay. So, and I just keep going up to find like what is the new minimum that I can get for these services, to where, like, I was just watching one of your videos on route density, and it's very true, because in that new neighborhood that I was telling you I really like, I've got 3 lawns, 2 are next door, and then 1 is across the street, and I can just walk to it. So I was there on Wednesday, July 21st. I started those 3 lawns at 10:12. I ended them at 11:21. So that is 70 minutes, or 60, close to there, 70 minutes. And it's $52 for each lawn. So it's like 150. So then you're talking, well, that's a lot better than $60 an hour. But it all comes with, and I know this is something you're big on, knowing your numbers. If I didn't write these times down, I would just be guessing. And guessing's okay at the beginning when you don't know any better, because what else are you going to do? But as soon as possible, getting your numbers and knowing how long it takes you to do things, it's very helpful.
Very cool. And speaking of the numbers for your YouTube has been going through the roof this past year. What's kind of next for you? I think one thing that I not struggle with, but the challenging part for us is come up with, where's the media side going to go next? Like what are we going towards next? Come up with new creative things on a continual basis. And fortunately, I have people that can kind of take that off my plate in terms of the editing and things like that. But it's still a process. Like, hey, like how many different topics can I come up with lawn care, right, and landscaping? For you, it's a matter of, you have a very good humor, but then also oddly satisfying. Like, where's the evolution of Copper Creek going? Are you trying to take it in a different direction? Are you trying to take it more of a personal brand direction, or what's kind of your plan for the midterm kind of next year or so?
So it's a good question, because it's something I've had to face, and I have had good growth this year. But what I found is that, as I'm sure you're aware, there have been a lot more people doing the tall grass stuff. The issue is they're doing it better than I have. So they are finding yards that are much worse than anything I've ever done. Or like there's a couple of guys in Australia. I mean, Florida's Florida, but Australia is Australia, right? I mean, that grass is tall. And then the other thing that maybe this group of a half dozen creators has done is they've really focused on the social side of it more than I ever have. So it's not just mowing tall grass, it's mowing tall grass for free for a single mom with cancer. And I'm not trying to like throw any shade when I'm talking about that, because all I've ever done is try and get people to click with entertaining stuff like, oh, tallest grass he's ever done, man, it's 6 feet tall, let's take a look. So they're just taking that to the next step where it's even more clickable. And some of their success, with their success, I've seen my views just, I think like that's now the next level of what you got to do. So I have had to figure out like, well, where am I going to go from here? So I think one thing is I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to the homeowners that have been watching. So that's one
which
thing.
Which is the bulk of your viewers.
So
right?
the lawn care channel, or the lawn care company owners, again, subset of a subset of a subset.
Thank you. Yes. the 3% over here.
Exactly. I'm going to try and maybe take a look at like some more homeowner grade. I already did that once with a real tiny pressure washer that I would never normally use. But I was like, well, what's the smallest thing? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like if you're a homeowner, how big a one do you need? Well, it all depends on how much you want to spend in time and money. So doing more stuff like that. I picked up a really cheap string trimmer that I think is going to be a joke off of Amazon. But so some videos like that maybe will appeal from the product side of people who are looking to get into it. I do want to try and do some, like you did a short on what do you prefer, string trimmer or edging. I want to try and see if I can find some way to do some shorter educational, like maybe a minute and a half. Here's the best way to do an overgrown lawn. You edge first because of this, this, and this. Then you string trim because of this, this, and this. Unless, something like that. And then the other thing is, as we get into fall, I'm going to try and focus some more back on pressure washing, because as the summer has picked up, I just haven't had time for it or the desire to do it with mowing. So that'll be, our geography here around the middle of October and November, we can get away with monthly cuts during the winter. So I'm going to have a lot more time for that. So trying to do that. And then there's also some cleaning stuff I might try, some other related concrete cleaning things that I don't know if they'll make good videos, but I'm going to try those out. So
as long as there's a good animal on there.
Something like that. Yes.
Cool. So going forward in the future, obviously making more videos and all the rest of it, from the business side of things, do you think there'll ever be something you do want to branch out and help the business owners on? Or is there anything from a solo operation, something that you could pass down to them, you think, down the road?
So part of the issue with me is I'm pretty selfish, and I, especially with as much time as videos take and research, when you're giving business advice, you need to get it right. And not only do you need to get it right, but you have to account for all the things you don't know and cover that. So if I'm talking about how to start your business in Florida, I can tell you how to do it in my county, in my city, but then I've got to research what are the general guidelines if you're in Washington State, and what do I tell somebody who's in Virginia and wants it. So it's the amount of time and research that I would sink into some of those business videos only to have them perform, just a couple hundred views
horribly.
Or something.
Horribly.
It's just so demoralizing. It's like, what am I doing this for? And I'll do some dumb pressure washing on the sidewalk and it gets a whole bunch. So the reward versus the time you put in, I would like to do business topics, but there's just not enough. And like I said, this is selfish. There's just not enough reward in it for me to put my time into that, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot of time. You got to make sure all your ducks are in a row and you're not telling people the wrong thing. The other thing too is that I don't want to do business stuff because I know there's a very good chance I could mess something up. And I remember there was a YouTuber who did this video. It was horrible advice. It was him and his employee sitting in a truck, and they were like, which one's better, W-2 or 1099? How do you want to get paid? I pay you W-2 because you like it more. It's like, no. The IRS tells you which one to do. I think that video's been deleted, thankfully, but it was a disaster of bad information. I don't think he meant to do it on purpose. But so that's the other thing. If I'm being a goofball mowing a tall grass or something, the worst somebody can say is, look at this bald idiot mowing the grass wrong. But if I tell wrong business advice, man, I don't want to be held liable if I ruin somebody's life or their finances or something.
Now, this is something I want to ask you. So from your perspective as a business owner, creator, et cetera, what's something that introspectively and just being self-aware that you struggle with just from your own personality that kind of gets in your way for growth? And is it, because this is just some observation from our conversation, 4 or 5 times on the video you've talked about having everything exact and perfect, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, etc. Is that something that you kind of have to fight against, or is that something you've leaned into as a business owner?
I don't think I struggle too much with perfection, at least in the lawn care side of things. One thing, I don't know if it hurts my growth, but one thing that has been a real issue for me the entire time I've been doing social media is comparisons. So I compare myself to people. And as I was starting out the first few years, I couldn't really be happy with the gains that I had, even though they were a lot more than everyone else, because there was still somebody always ahead of me that I had to catch, right? Oh yeah, I just passed 10,000. I mean, there's been folks doing this much longer than me who haven't hit 10,000, but I wasn't happy about that because I was just still looking at, and now that I'm at what many would say a very high point, I still am not really that happy because some of my performance lately is not the peak that it's ever been. Like if I keep going up like this and this and this, and then I kind of come down, well, this may still be a lot higher than where I ever was or where 90% of people are, but I did better at one point. What am I doing wrong that, is making this fail? And I see other people doing better. And so I'm subscribed to very few channels just because this sounds real bad too, but when good things, like part of me is happy when good things happen to people or when they have success, but there's always still this little voice that I have to shut up in the back of my mind that's like, well, what are they doing so different than you? And why is it working so well for them? And it's completely toxic. It is completely toxic. and I haven't
You're
found a
trying
way.
to dethrone the king of oddly satisfied.
I haven't found a way
They're
to deal with
storming the castle.
My time is limited. They're wheeling the guillotine in.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you for that. Someone in the comments had to, of course, say, well, you don't have to worry about perfection because you have Next Insurance to be able to.
Hey, that's a good tagline. I need to use that. Oh, what I did, somebody asked about advice for somebody starting out. I think they were younger or something, but
14, yep.
Not so much as the young thing, but at least just one thing that I think I've learned is that if you have any interest in starting a lawn care business, I don't think there's a lot of reason to say that you shouldn't do it. Just do it part-time. Start with the equipment you have. You can always build. If you've got free time and you're okay trading that time for some money, I think that's a great way to start, because there's I don't know where it comes from other than ancient Chinese proverb, but when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago, right? Yeah. When's the second best time to plant a tree? Today. So just because you haven't done anything doesn't mean that you shouldn't. And what I found is that something that I thought would, just be a way to kill a couple of days or a few hours every other day or something and bring in a little pocket change, turned into something that quite literally changed our lives because of now my wife's been able to retire, and part of that is probably results not typical because of the success on YouTube. But on a smaller scale, even if I didn't have YouTube, it might have took a little longer. But I think the same thing could have been done, where I could have got my wife out of the corporate world, that she was, making good money, but she wasn't really happy with the job and the hours were bad. And so that's one thing that I think would be a good advice for anybody who's got any interest in it. I mean, try it out. And if you hate it, at least you tried it. And you don't have to put in a whole bunch of money to get started. You may even have some of the tools already, but lawn care is one of those things where you can get started pretty easily and just build up from there. And it's nice too, because if you do that at a time when you don't need the money, if you ever run into a time 2, 3, 4 years down the road when you do, well, now you've got, a business that's a little bit more mature and can hopefully help out with those things.
Well, that was my final question, was what would you say to someone thinking about getting started? So my last question then will have to be, it'll have to be the fact that, okay, you mentioned your wife. Is she going to ever star in the videos, or is that a hard line part of the contract? No,
I'm
no
trying.
videos.
She doesn't want to right now. I'm trying to. She voiced a bobcat mower one time. I did a little skit where I was like having a mental breakdown and my bobcat mower was talking to myself. So she voiced that, but you could tell she was real timid in the voiceover. She wasn't comfortable with it. But yeah, maybe one day we'll get her on.
Oh man, awesome. Well, Brad, really want to appreciate you coming on tonight. We wish you all the best, and we'll make sure we keep pounding the subscribe button, the like button, and try to get you back. So I really do appreciate it, though, and I know you have a lot of better things you could be doing than talking to me, I'm sure. So
you'd be surprised.
Thanks for coming on, Brad. Really appreciate it.
Have a good one, guys. Thanks, Mike.
Take care. All right, everyone. So that wraps up today's roundup episode. By the way, if you stick with me for 10 seconds, I'm going to show you something. I was going to wear it, and I completely forgot. Give me 1 second. I'm going to show you something. Hold on. It's coming. It's going to be worth the wait. So I got to tell you now. I have to tell you this now because it's only a limited time that this is on here. So for those of you that have been asking, we did make the shirt available. Mowing is for stupid people. And then on the back, it says stupid rich. If you don't know what that joke is, it's okay. Another creator made a video saying that stupid people mow lawns. And so my response, I didn't make a response video everyone wanted me to. Instead, I just made a shirt. So definitely check out lawncaremedia.com. There's a new apparel section we're going to be adding to. That's only available for the next couple of weeks, and then we're going to take it down because it's very much of an inside joke. So we'll take it down eventually. We do have some cool ones coming up, though, we're going to design that you can use for uniforms if you don't have uniforms and things like that. So check that out down the road, lawncaremedia.com. But thanks for coming on tonight, and hope you all have a great rest of your evening. Take care.